Hey everybody, welcome to episode 6 of Fear Frequency. I am your host, Jimmy Champane, and with me today is my co-host, George Frizard. How's it going, dude?
Good, what's up?
Not a lot. So we're coming to you this week a day late because if any of the listeners don't know, I am the post-production supervisor for Austin Evans. He's like a huge tech YouTuber, and the new iPhone came out, so we rented a house in Capistrano Beach, you know, a little bit further south in California, and shot our massive iPhone video. So I was gone all weekend, and I just got back today.
Nice, how was that?
It was pretty cool. The house needed work, but like it's hard to complain about a beach house, and the new iPhone's great. It was just like, it was a long trip, but we got some good food. We rented cinema anamorphic lenses, so this video will look like a movie, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
So yeah, that's why we're a day late. But we have a huge show this week. So we have some great news. We have a movie review, and then we also have an interview with Joe Lynch, the director of Mayhem, which, if you remember from a couple episodes back, is my favorite movie of the year. George really liked it. Mayhem comes out this week, November 10th. You can download it. I think it'll be in limited theaters. You should download it. You should watch it. You should give it all of your money because it's awesome. And we got lucky enough to sit down with Joe for about 20 minutes and just hear all about how this movie was made. So that'll be at the end of the show. But we have a lot more stuff to talk about before that.
Oh yeah, it's a packed episode for sure.
Yeah, so we'll kick right off segment 1 with our first news story here. And that's that CBS is developing a Twilight Zone reboot for their all-access streaming service. Now, if you don't know, CBS has been trying out the streaming service. They launched the new Star Trek show on there, which I've seen has mixed reviews. But yeah, they want to reboot Twilight Zone, which, I don't know, could be cool, I guess.
I guess it just depends on, you know, how much effort they put into it, because I think the first one is so highly regarded because the stories were not all, obviously, but most of them were pretty interesting. So I guess it's just the writing quality and the production values are really what the show's going to live or die by, I think.
Yeah, and you know, it's on a streaming service, so it'll probably get a little bit more money, and it looks like it's going to be under Jordan Peele's Monkey Paw banner, which, like, you know, Get Out looked really good for a $5 million movie, and he's funny, so I feel like that's a good fit for you know, a new Twilight Zone show.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a good match, and I mean I do hope that the show does well. I'm a big fan of the original series, and I'm excited to always get more Twilight Zone. So if it's done with the right amount of care and effort, then I don't see how it could be that bad.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, if it does well, that's awesome, and if it doesn't do well, then we'll just forget about it immediately. You know,
right.
Like no one's going to be like extremely devistated if the streaming service version of the Twilight Zone doesn't do that well. You know, like it's going to have a very low attach rate right at the beginning.
Right. You know, I think there's going to be some hardcore fans that kind of shit on it right from the start because it's not the original. But
yeah, just like Star Trek.
Right, exactly. So we'll just have to see how it goes.
Awesome. So next up on the list is a much more exciting news story, and that's that the Starry Eyes directors are directing a remake of Pet Sematary, the Stephen King novel. Now, I really liked the original Pet Sematary. I watched a lot on AMC Fear Fest as a kid, and it scared the shit out of me because of the sister Zelda. But then I watched it last year. It doesn't hold up very well. It's about 30 or 40 minutes too long. But it's still a pretty good movie. But, you know, the director of it, Andy Muschietti, was going to direct this. He really wanted to. But I'm kind of glad they're giving this to another director. Well, directors. It's Dennis Widmeyer and Kevin Kolsch, who wrote and directed Starry Eyes, which we both really liked.
Yeah, I thought Starry Eyes was really good. It was kind of an interesting story, really unique. And, I mean, I thought that movie was great. And I think that, you know, the people who are... If they're directing Pet Sematary, I have full faith that they'll do a good recreation of it.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, like Andy Muschietti would be a good choice, but, you know, the cool thing about the Stephen King stuff is it's really hard to get burned out on it, because even though all the stories are connected, they're all very different.
Yeah, it seems like, you know, each story, I mean, obviously there's an overarching Stephen King universe where all the stories connect, but each one really can be looked at individually and can be enjoyed that way. And I think the first one is okay. I think it's a little overrated, but like you said, I think Zelda is like definitely the scariest part of the original. So
Yeah, I still have nightmares about that.
yeah, that was just pretty horrifying imagery, and I think that this duo could definitely do some really creepy stuff with that after seeing what they did in Starry Eyes.
Definitely. I mean, Starry Eyes is just a great movie all around. I feel like it fits that perfect like middle ground between head spacey It Follows type horror and, you know, like actual gory, scary, like actiony horror. It's like right in the middle, and it has a little bit of everything for everyone, but it does have a pretty interesting plot. It's about a girl who, you know, she's trying to make it in LA, and she lives with a bunch of girls who are also trying to make it out here as actresses, and she sells her soul to the devil, the devil owns like a movie production company called Astraeus Pictures, and it gets pretty crazy pretty quick. It's awesome.
Yeah, we didn't know it was a documentary until this year when the whole Harvey Weinstein thing came out, but
Yeah, you know what? It's a pretty good metaphor for Harvey Weinstein and I guess Kevin Spacey. So
yeah, so you know,
that's bad. Objectively. So then, moving on, we have a good news here that the horror movie The Business has made 1.1 billion in revenue at the domestic box office. So that's just like theatrical horror movies this year have made 1.1 billion dollars, says the New York Times. That's pretty cool. That's a lot of money.
yeah, I think this year was a particularly good year for horror. It was obviously the biggest horror movie of the year theatrically. I think that had a big part of, you know, pushing this figure up to 1 billion this year. But it is cool to see that this genre got such a infusion of cash this year over previous years. Like, this was definitely, I've heard more people talk about horror, and there's been more interesting horror movies coming out now than has been in like the last few years, definitely.
Definitely, for sure. And, you know, we had we had Split, we had Get Out. There's just an Annabelle Creation. I feel like it was like, you know, the Nintendo Switch has a new big game every month. I feel like we've had a new big horror movie to look forward to every month. And for the most part, they all turned out pretty good. Like even Jigsaw, which I'd say is in the, you know, the worst half of the list, still turned out okay for what it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's like true to the series, which at this point, like the last 2 or 3 movies were all kind of that style of like over the top ridiculous. But
Right.
I mean, I think that made a ton of money, and it was on pretty much a shoestring budget. And I think people are just really into the genre right now, and we've actually been rewarded for going to the movies with pretty good horror movies this year.
Yeah, seriously. And Happy Death Day made 48 million. Somehow 47 Meters Down made 44 million, which is hilarious because you could watch that movie on YouTube for free for over a year. But people didn't know that, so then they went and saw it in theaters. I really like Split a lot. I thought that was great. Happy Death Day also, I think I mentioned, I thought was amazing. Get Out, I don't want to say vastly overrated, but I feel like pretty overrated in terms of a horror movie. I liked it. I don't think it was amazing, but that was pretty good. Split was just cool because, you know, M. Night Shyamalan's on his winning streak, so that's nice to see.
Yeah, I haven't seen Split yet, so I have to check that out. But
Yeah, gotta see that.
yeah, I forgot that Get Out even came out this year. I thought that was like late last year. So
I think it was like January.
Yeah.
It was like really early in the year.
yeah, I think you're right. And that one definitely had a ton of buzz around it. There's no question that made a ton of money. So
Yeah, it came out at a good time.
yeah. So between that and it, those are probably the 2 biggest heavy hitters this year for that $1 billion mark.
Totally. And then our next one involves Jason, and so I think you should handle this one.
All right, so the Jason Goes to Hell director says that Jason canonically is a deadite from Evil Dead.
This is like a double-edged sword situation, totally, because that's really cool on its own, but then it's like it's tied to Jason Goes to Hell, which is a really shitty movie.
Yeah, it sucks that that's like one of the definite low points of the whole series, and that it's like the director connects that one with Evil Dead, which is like connecting those 2 universes is definitely cool, and
And it makes sense.
Yeah.
It totally adds up. It's sweet.
right, like there's no reason that these, like the logic adds up. You're like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess he could be, but it just sucks that the one way we can connect those 2 dots is through one of the worst movies in the series.
Yeah, so director Adam Marcus, he talked to Horror Geek Life, which I've never heard of them. He said, I wanted to create a mythology for Jason in this movie because it had driven me nuts as a viewer. He explains, She, as in Pamela Voorhees, she makes a deal with the devil by reading from the Necronomicon to bring her back her son. And this is why Jason isn't Jason. He's Jason plus the Evil Dead. That totally adds up. I mean, you could even tie that into Pet Sematary if you really wanted to. What they ended up doing was they hid Necronomicon in Jason Goes to Hell. It's in plain sight. It's not really hidden. They just can't, it's different movie companies, so they can't directly say, like, oh shit, it's the Necronomicon. But
yeah,
it's cool.
That's kind of a fun way to turn what was originally probably just an Easter egg into, like, kind of a connection between two cinematic universes.
Yeah, and what's funny is, like, when Halloween does really well next year, Friday the 13th is not far behind in getting a total reboot that ignores everything after, like, the third movie, I would say, for Jason. So this will definitely get axed. Mark my words. Like, someone who's listening, write this down, and this will not be canon within the next, I want to say, 4 years. Definitely. There's no way.
I think you're probably right in saying that.
Yeah, so this is a cool little Easter egg, I would say. It's, like, kind of interesting, I guess. So the next one, speaking of bad news, is that the Weinstein Company has removed the horror thriller movie Polaroid from its November 22nd release date, which has already changed because I'm pretty sure this was originally supposed to come out in December. And the Weinstein Company, my God, even before this, what's his name, Harvey Weinstein?
Yeah.
Even before all this shit happened, they were just notorious. They moved around Amityville, the social media one that just came out for free. They moved that shit around. They're so weak with their horror movies. So it might be good that this got pulled from release.
Yeah, I don't think anyone was really highly anticipating Polaroid. I don't think anyone was really chomping at the bit for it. So I'm sure they were just like, well, just forget about it now. Maybe probably release it as like a VOD later this year or like early next year.
Yeah.
Because I assume it's like so expensive to put movies through like the whole theatrical circuit that they're probably just like, forget about it. This thing's not going to make any money anyway.
But the big news story in this news story is that when Amityville: The Awakening was released in theaters October 28th, which again, you're going to remove a movie from theaters multiple times to release it the day after Stranger Things 2. Like, I don't even need to get started on that. This movie made $742 in theaters.
That's unbelievably low.
I saw people tweeting too, like, "Oh, this is just a bummer for the genre." It's like, is it really? I'm not on that. I'm not on that wavelength of people who are like, go see every horror movie, even if it's bad, because like, if you don't, the genre won't make enough money, and then we won't get more movies. That's not how it works. You should go see good horror movies, and then the studios will realize that they can't just put out shit for people to go see. I think people are realizing that too, but people are like, man, we should have banded together to go see Amityville: The Awakening. It's like, no, it's been fucking free for 3 weeks. Why the hell would anyone pay money to go see it in theaters when it's a shitty movie made by a shitty company?
Yeah, I think that, with all the buzz around that movie before it came out, even when it was free, being pretty negative, I don't see why people should have been rushing to the theaters to go see this thing. But even with that being a factor, I mean, like, just over $700 for a theatrical release of a movie, that's laughable. That's unbelievably low.
Yeah. Yeah, just unreal, dude. Like, I bet there's direct-to-DVD movies that make more money than that. And you know what sucks about it is that this movie's getting more press than great stuff like Dead Shack. Like all these great indie horror movies we talk about, they get like maybe a news post that they're coming out. And, everyone's got to jump on this train to shit on Amityville: The Awakening just because of the Weinstein business. So it's just a mess top to bottom. But the next story's good, and it's that Warner Brothers has submitted to have it nominated for Oscars, which I didn't like. This is a big deal, I guess. I don't know why more horror movies aren't, I guess, submitted, because there have been really good ones. Like, I think The Conjuring 2 should have won. Like, it could, like, Vera Farmiga could have easily won a Best Actress.
Yeah.
For that. Or, Patrick Wilson could have won a Best Actor. Like, easily.
Yeah, it is kind of strange that, more horror movies aren't, like, I can't even remember the last time a horror movie was in like in the running for an Oscar. I know Silence of the Lambs, I think, won Best Picture or something the year that came out, but that's the last thing I can think of. And I think with all the buzz around it this year, I think that it'll definitely be nominated for something, probably at least like costume design or, sound.
Yeah, makeup.
Yeah, makeup, sound design, something like
Javier
that.
Botet stuff.
Right.
I guess music. They have in this article everything they want it nominated for. So Best Picture probably won't make it there.
No.
Best Director also again probably won't make it there. Best Adapted Screenplay could definitely make it there.
I could see that.
Yeah, no question. That's easy enough. Best Supporting Actress for Sophia Lillis. Who did she play? Bev?
Yeah.
Okay. Probably won't win.
No, but she was good.
Yeah, she was great. Best cinematography. I think that has a serious shot there. Like that movie was blocked really well.
Yeah.
Best production design. Lots of practical effects. It got knocked for CGI a lot, which I think was well deserved. But I think there were some really good effects besides the CGI.
I thought some of the CGI didn't look great and kind of took me out of the movie at some points, but
I think it was just inconsistent.
Yeah.
Like, some of it was great and some of it was not. So it made the not great stuff look worse.
Right. So there was definitely points where you would see like some effect and just kind of be like, okay, like I don't know if this really works like at this moment when it did like a little while ago. So I don't know. It probably won't win for that.
That movie's not out on DVD yet, is it?
No, definitely
Okay,
not.
so I totally heard a radio ad on Halloween that was like, go see it for Halloween. And I was like, where? Like, bitch, where? Like, where am I supposed to go see this movie? It's definitely not in theaters anymore. It came out in September, and it's not on DVD. Like, what the fuck do you want me to do?
No, I remember that campaign going around, and I think they did like another big push for that movie around
they
Halloween.
Put it back in theaters.
Yeah, like I saw promoted tweets for it and stuff. Like,
I didn't.
Like, go with your friends to go see it in theaters Halloween. So I think they were like pushing it out again for a second wave around Halloween.
What a tone deaf push! Like, that is not a Halloween movie by any stretch of the imagination. That's a summer horror movie. Like, that fits right in there with Friday the 13th as summer horror.
Yeah, I think that, they just thought that it was a horror movie, so naturally...
Gotta milk it for all it's worth.
Right. It's gonna work on Halloween, so I guess...
So, next up is Best Film Editing. I mean, any movie could win for this, I think. Like, you only notice editing when it's bad, and I feel like it's very rare that happens. I feel like I've noticed it a lot this year, but I don't think I noticed it in a landslide amount. Best Costume Design could definitely win.
Yeah, I think Skarsgård should win for like the character, like all the Pennywise like makeup and everything.
Yeah, slap all those idiots in the face who are like, he's not scary. It looks like a clown. It's like he's a fucking clown. Best Visual Effects easily could win that.
Yeah, there were some really good visual effects in that. Like, I think that the Georgie scene when he's puts his arm in the sewer, I think that is a great...
Spoilers.
I mean, the book's like 40 years old.
Yeah, who cares? I saw like people on YouTube, like if you go look at any It thing, it's like, someone please rip this and post it to YouTube. It's like everyone wants to see that one scene for some reason.
Yeah.
And then we have Best Sound Editing / Mixing, which, like, sure.
Yeah,
and
why not? Throw it in there.
Best Makeup and Hairstyling. Pennywise, dude.
Yeah.
That's some good makeup and hairstyling. Best Original Score. I don't think it stands a chance there.
No, I think that there's probably a few, original movies that are coming out this year that are like Oscar bait that'll probably win that.
Too bad there's not a Best Stephen King adaptation section.
Give it like 2 years with all these Stephen King adaptations coming out. That'll be a new category at the Oscars.
Yeah. So then we have another It news that I'm like I'm adding in right now because I just saw it on the website that I was reading from. Jessica Chastain wants to play Beverly in It Chapter 2. People were like, there's a campaign for this to happen right alongside the campaign to replace Kevin Spacey with Kevin James in House of Cards. But I think this one's more important. Jessica Chastain, who I think would be a really good Beverly, just saying. She's like, well, I love Andy and Barbara. She told this Screen Rant. She worked with them on Andy's directorial debut, which was Mama, which is a really shitty movie, his first film. And Barbara is one of my best friends, so listen, of course I want to work. They're my friends. They're like my family. Anything they're doing, I want to be a part of it, so I hope we can make it happen. I think Barbara is Andy's wife. She, produced the movie, I'm pretty sure. And Muschietti loves the idea, obviously, because he put her in his first bad movie.
Right.
So now he can put her in his third good movie.
I think that the casting works. I'm not a huge Jessica Chastain fan, but...
Oh, I love her. She's great.
I mean... it does make sense. I mean, I could definitely see her as the character. I'm just not a big fan of her personally.
I feel like she could kick my ass, and I think that's why I like her.
She definitely could kick my ass, no question.
She just looks tough.
Yeah, and that's definitely a good look for the character, especially as an adult.
Okay, so before we end segment 2, we're back with another creature feature, and this week it's Night of the Witch, which is a new short film from Zena S. Dixon, the real queen of horror, as she calls herself. She was kind enough to send this about 5-minute short film over. It's pretty cool. It's like this guy, he dreams every night that a witch is chasing him. I won't spoil it, but it gets pretty crazy. That's out November 10th. I'm pretty sure it's going to be free because it's like a 5-minute thing. So if you want to check that out, go follow her on Twitter at, I think, Xena, Real Queen of Horror.
Yeah, definitely check this out. I thought it was really creepy and it looked really good. It was well done, and I think everyone should check this out.
Yeah. So, and then if you didn't listen last week, Creature Feature is our new segment where we highlight someone doing something cool in the horror community. So we're back from our quick break with segment 2, and this week we're going to be talking about Bad Match, which is written and directed by David Churchirillo. And if that name doesn't sound familiar to you, he wrote Cheap Thrills, which is a great movie starring Pat Healy. It's about a guy who gets paid to do progressively more disgusting and horrific things, and he's competing with Ethan Embry, and they get money every time they do it. It's pretty cool. But Bad Match is about a guy named Harris who he uses Tinder. He's here in LA. He's hitting up chicks every night of the week. And then he swipes right on Riley, and she's a little bit clingy, and things just take a majorly dark turn from there. And I like this movie a lot. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I thought it was actually really good. The plot, when you start it, seems kind of simple and kind of played out, I guess. Something, that you've seen before. But I think the way they integrate the fake Tinder is interesting because it's a lot like the normal, like the real life Tinder.
It's just Tinder.
Yeah, I mean, it is just
But
Tinder.
It's called Match or something. It looks terrible in the movie. I thought it just the graphic design of it was pretty bad.
Yeah, it doesn't look good, but the way that it functions and the way that the people talk about it within the movie is just exactly the same as Tinder. And that works, I mean, obviously, because they're just pulling something that exists in real life and just naming it something else.
Yeah, so this movie, it looks a little cheap. It's not going to blow anyone away for best cinematography or anything like that. But it's totally saved by its writing and its acting. The writing is just so good. The way they talk about, tactics on Tinder and the way that Harris is using Tinder and the way that people respond to him, that is just straight out of reality and not in a cringy way. It's relatable and funny, and it's not even just it's not making fun of it. It's just telling it how it is, and it works totally.
Yeah, I think the writing here is really strong, really true to life. I mean, there's even a character in the movie that is Harris's arch enemy over Xbox, who's this kid he talks to when he's playing Gears of War with him, and he's
yeah, even that was just perfect.
Right, he's trash talking the kid, and the kid's trash talking him, and that all sounds like I've definitely met people on Xbox Live that talk just like that kid.
Yeah, and it's like a kid where you think you're cool, and you're gonna get some witty joke in on him, and then he just goes, "Oh yeah, well I fucked your mom, suck my dick." It's you can't win.
Right. It's typical kid that's just had his first little bit of freedom by being able to talk to strangers online.
This is another movie where the director is trying to get you really hard with a big twist, and unlike I think every other movie this year that we've talked about so far that does the big twist thing, I did not predict this one, and it was not for a stupid reason that like I never would have guessed. It was just a really good twist.
I thought that there was gonna be something by the way that the third act was playing out. I thought there was gonna be some kind of twist, but I was trying to figure out what part of the story could be, like who could it be, like kind of a whodunit thing. And then once the actual ending was revealed, that was like the last thing on my mind. Definitely didn't expect that, and the ending is dark. I'm like so dark.
So dark. It's so dark. Like you'll never guess it. It's unguessable. So like I'm not gonna talk about it. But man, as it unravels, it's just fucking amazing. Like it's so good. It's so well written. It's so well paced that this movie, it just took me for a ride, man. Like start to finish. Like sometimes when I'm watching movies at home, I pick my phone up. I'm on Twitter. I did not touch my phone for this entire movie. It never gets boring. It never drops the pace. And I think that's partly because Jack Cutmore Scott, the guy who plays Harris, he just rules. He's just a great actor. He's funny. He's like charismatic. He plays the role just super well.
Yeah, I mean, he's really likable. He has a cool job. Gets with a lot of girls. He seems like a nice guy for the most part. He's got good...
It's bizarre how much his like the place he works is just like my old job. It's like an agency. He takes a girl to like one of my favorite bars around here, Button Mash. He takes one of the girls there, and then the restaurant they hang out in throughout most of the movie, I just went there like 2 weeks ago. So that was it was surreal. It felt like watching a documentary.
Yeah, I think that everything felt really genuine and realistic. I mean, even towards the end when things kind of ramp up, I never really lost a sense of realism. I was never watching it and being like, oh, this is so like this completely. There's never a point where I was like, oh, this totally takes me out of the movie. I thought that the writing, the pacing, everything was really good, and the ending is something you won't see coming. I think that's just a great movie overall.
Yeah, so Bad Match is out now. You can rent it on VOD services. I did a quick Google search just to see, if it's in theaters anywhere, because they did the thing where they say it's getting a limited theatrical release, but then you're like, is it really? It is. It's in a lot of theaters. So you should definitely see that in theaters if you can, because I'm sure they'll get more money out of it. But this is one that I think will definitely end up on Netflix, but you should definitely buy it or rent it before it goes on Netflix. Like David Churchirillo, this dude deserves your money.
Yeah, he made a great movie. If you haven't seen Cheap Thrills, check that out as well.
Oh, yeah, Cheap Thrills.
Yeah,
so good.
I definitely give Bad Match a recommend.
Yeah, hard recommend. Like solid 3.9/4 out of 5 stars for me.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair rating.
Yeah. So before we move on to our third segment, which I am so stoked for, I just want to quickly go over everything coming out this week, because it's another one of those weeks where just a ton of stuff is coming out in terms of horror movies and games. So I'm pulling up my calendar right now. So this Friday, November 10th, we have I Remember You, which is a movie that we'll talk about next week. It's a foreign language IFC Midnight movie. It's kind of like a dark thriller. It looks pretty cool. Mayhem is out. And then another movie called Thelma is out. We also just got a screener for it. Neither of us have checked it out, but that one's another foreign language dark thriller, but it's getting really good reviews. And then obviously Bad Match is out now. And then if you have a Nintendo Switch, you can play Doom, which is one of the best shooters of the past few years. So I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I'm excited to check out Doom on the Switch for sure.
Yeah, so we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back with a really special segment 3. All right, so we're back with segment 3, and before George takes the floor here, I got to introduce this one because it's kind of a weird story how this all came about. I surf Amazon Prime a lot for horror movies because they just have a generally much better selection than Netflix. They have some great stuff on the free Prime and also to rent, which Netflix, obviously, you can't rent movies. But something that I noticed in the horror section that was popping up a lot was these movies called A Haunting in Blank. and I would see them, and then one caught my eye, and it was called A Haunting in Saginaw, Michigan. So as you know, George is from Michigan. I'm from Michigan, but I'm living in LA. I was like, I gotta check this out. Because this looks terrible. And I was pleasantly surprised. You know, they're not great. They're very hit or miss. There's about 8 of them. And it's like a much higher budget episode of Ghost Hunters or Ghost Adventures on the Travel Channel. It comes out once a year, and it's from a rapper named Prozac, who's from Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
And the weird thing about it, as if that's not weird enough, is that every one of these movies focuses on a place in Saginaw, Michigan, which is not a big place. So if you believe, like, a lot of it's obviously faked, but if you believe in the ghost stories, Saginaw, Michigan is a gate to hell, because there are like at least 8 or 9 of these movies, I want to say, and some dark shit happens. But the scariest one by far is A Haunting on Dice Road, and as fate would have it, A Haunting on Dice Road 2 was showing its premiere at the Temple Theater this past weekend, so we sent George out to go check it out. So you can take the mic now, George. Tell me all about your experience watching A Haunting on Dice Road 2.
Well, just to start this off, the only one I'd seen before seeing this was Dice Road 1, so I think that was the 6th in the series. I'm pretty sure this one that just came out is the 7th one in the Haunting series, the Haunting cinematic universe. And I thought that was actually really creepy. I was like genuinely scared by that movie. There's a lot of moments where I was like, you know what? I don't need to watch this anymore. This is like way too creepy for me. There was a point where
you watched it in pieces, right?
Yeah, I had to turn it off at one point and come back to it the next day because I was too creeped out by what was going on. And I really did like that movie. I think that's definitely worth a watch for anybody who has Amazon Prime. One thing that's really unique about these movies is they're basically just a group of like ghost hunters, a knockoff like of the Ghost Hunters show, but they just do things in Saginaw, Michigan, which is bizarre enough as it is.
Can you explain what give us some background on Saginaw? Like, what is it? Like, what kind of town is it? Is it big? Is it a city?
So I haven't spent too much time in Saginaw. The only time I'd ever been there really was just for this premiere. And so this was at the downtown in the Temple Theater. And I mean, it reminded me of like any like halfway decent town. It feels kind of like a Pontiac or like it's just kind of like there are
like Oxford.
Right. It's like there are people there, but you can tell there's not really like a ton of activity that goes on. It's just kind of like exists. It's just kind of like basic. Like if you were to put it on the scale, it'd probably be like a 5 or so. And just like general activities going on. But for some reason, it's just extremely, extremely haunted. Allegedly. I had no idea this was such an event in Saginaw. So I went the second night. They did 2 showings, a Friday night showing and a Saturday night showing. As I was pulling up to the theater, I was like an hour or so early for the showing. I think it started doors open at 8, I think. And I got there like right around 8. And then I think it started at 9. And so I got there like pretty much right when the doors were opening. And there was like a line coming from the theater, like down the block. There was like police in the street directing traffic. They had I'm telling you, they had spotlights outside the theater.
Oh my God. I love it. I didn't know any of this. I love it.
But, I mean, the theater itself, the Temple Theater, was packed. I'm telling you. I went the second night that this movie was showing, and it was packed. I don't think there was, if it wasn't sold out, it was like 90% sold out. This thing was full to the gills. Like, before the movie started, Prozac came out with his, like, a small section of his crew, and he was like, okay, who's been here for all 7 years? People were like, whoa! It's like, there are people that have been coming to this every year, annually, for 7 years, and have seen these movies in this theater for 7 years. He actually, when he came out, he did a thing where he was like, who's in here for 7 years? Woo! 6 years. Woo! 5 years. He counted down to like 4, then he was like, okay, I can keep going, but you guys understand what's going on.
You gotta ease yourself into the situation with these Saginaw folk. So how much did this cost? Like, what was the package you got with this?
So there were 2 packages. One was the VIP, and that was $75, and that gave you
kind of a lot.
Kind of expensive. That gave you like a select seat, I guess, in the upper balcony, and I think you got drinks and food, and you got to go to the after party.
You didn't go to that, right?
No, I just did
I'm sure it was wild.
Yeah, I just did the basic package, which was $21, or it was $21 or $28, somewhere between that. And that got you just a seat in the general admission, which is like the lower floor, and a copy of the movie on DVD.
Awesome. I mean, I looked for it on Amazon. It's not there. And then just for everyone's reference, $75 for the VIP package is a lot of money when you consider that meeting John Carpenter was $200. Like meeting John Carpenter, the king of horror movies, seeing his concert and getting like a t-shirt and a signed poster and a cool little tote bag was $200. So, to go to a party, you're paying about half the price to meet John Carpenter. So there's some perspective for you.
Yeah, it seems like there's a little bit of discrepancy on what you're getting for the price you pay between those 2 things.
Dude, he must make a killing.
Yeah,
$28. That's a lot for a movie ticket.
Yeah, I'm telling you, Prozac definitely is making a killing on these because they are a real event in Saginaw, Michigan.
Okay, so how was the movie?
It was all right. I haven't seen the earlier ones, but I assume that this one was kind of more in the vein of some of the earlier ones, where there was definitely some... I'll start with the positives. So I thought that the tone was set up really well. I was definitely creeped out through the majority of the movie, and they do a good job of like explaining everything, talking about the history of the house. They even brought the guy who they the guy's house that they used. They brought him out on stage and had him like say a little bit about the movie, about his house before the movie started, and that was all cool. The way that they actually do the like investigation is all pretty good, and there was definitely a few times in the movie where something would happen and it would send like a chill down my spine. So it's definitely creepy at parts.
How does it compare to Dice Road 1? Because I actually got pretty creeped out by that too.
Yeah,
some of the stuff in Dice Road 1 was faked, but there was a lot of stuff in there that felt genuine to me, and it scared me.
Yeah, and there's definitely a few moments like that in this one, but there's also a lot of times where you could look at something and be like, well, this is obviously like something that you just faked. I'll give one example. So
yeah, go for it. I don't think you have to worry too much about spoilers here.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't... I mean, I don't know what the release is spoil in like a ghost investigation movie. I mean, they look around a house and try to find ghosts, so... there's one part where there's a closet in the granddaughter's bedroom, and they're like, this is like the creepiest part of the house. It's got the most activity, blah, blah, blah. One thing that they do in this movie, worse than the first Dice Road, is a lot of the movie is shot like a first-person perspective with... So it'll be like Prozac is walking around with the camera and just a flashlight, and you just see like his perspective. And
that's new.
And everything is like black. Like all the lights are out. The room is like pitch black, and you just see everything through first-person perspective with a flashlight.
Okay.
And
all right.
So there's definitely, that works in some parts. It definitely like raises the tension in some moments. And so there's one part where he's going through the granddaughter's bedroom, and she has all these little like dolls on her desk, and they're all facing forward, like facing towards the door, like where you walk in. And so he walks into the closet, and he's like, trying to provoke the ghost. He's like, hey, it's me, your boy. He's trying to like provoke the ghost, and then he like kind of turns around, and he comes out of the closet, and then you can hear like something going on the other side of the door, and then he tries to pull on the door, and it's like locked now from the inside.
Okay.
And so then he turns around, and as he's walking out of the room, he realizes that one of the dolls on the desk has been turned around.
Oh, I don't like that.
But the thing about this is, if you wanted to like show that something happened with that doll, you could have used the night vision camera that they set up in the room that they show you earlier in the movie and show that the doll turned around. because there's a shot earlier in the movie where it's a night vision camera set up in the room looking at the back wall, and you could have caught the like doll being turned around if it was turned around by like an entity or not a human being. And they don't show that. They just show Prozac walking past it and being like, whoa, this is turned around. And then it's like, then it shows the clip from earlier of him walking by the desk in the first person with a flashlight. It's like you see in this scene, the ghost was, like the doll's facing this way, but now it's facing the other way. So show the rest of it. It's like, why don't you show the wide shot of the room that would show the doll being turned around instead of just showing?
Oh, come on.
Like, that was...
Did they do the thing where when they replay stuff that happens, do they replay it 5 times?
They'll do the thing where they like slow something down or like zoom in. There's definitely a few really creepy moments. I mean, a lot of the stuff like could be faked, but if you go into the movie kind of buying into it, kind of just, you know, watching it.
Yeah, having fun.
Right, just watching it to like enjoy the like an episode of Ghost Hunters basically, then I think you'll have a good time with it. And there's definitely some creepy stuff going on in that house. Yeah,
the first Dice Road, for as much fun as we're making of this, that some stuff happens that I don't want to make fun of them, but I think some of the stuff that happens in the first Dice Road to fake it would be astronomically out of their budget.
Yeah,
that they have for this. So I feel like that kind of just, I don't want to say proves it, but some of the stuff was definitely real. Like a guy gets pushed off a second floor and falls on camera, like on his back. And there's no way anybody's like gonna do that just for shits and giggles. Like he falls about 8 feet onto his back.
Yeah, and I think if I were to compare how haunted Dice Road 1's location was to this one, I would say that the first Dice Road is like 10 haunted for sure. No one should live there. Stay away from there. I think this place is like a 4 haunted. Creepy stuff happens. I wouldn't want to stay there myself. The actual things that they catch on tape are way less scary than they are in the first Dice Road. One of the creepier parts, oh my god, I forgot about this. So there's one part where Prozac, they talk about this, there's 2 closets basically that are like the problem areas of the house. And one of the guys is in one of the closets, and then he's like, you know what, this is like too... I feel like too creeped out being in here. I'm not gonna be in here anymore. I'm not gonna be in the closet. And then Prozac is like, well, it's up to me then. I have to be in the closet.
And then, yeah, he says it just like that. If you're listening, he is not a good actor at all. It's hilarious. There's a part. I'm just gonna talk about this really quick. Sorry. Yeah. There's a part in Dice Road 1 where he goes in the basement and he sits on the tiniest little stool, and he has this tiny, tiny little table next to him with a single candle on it, and he starts like trying emotionally to talk to the ghost. He's like, if you died in here, please leave.
I'm glad you brought up the candle, because it's something I forgot. It's for the first like 15% of the movie, instead of Prozac using a flashlight, he just carries around a candle.
I mean, he's a big dude. He's like probably like 6'8", 6'9". He's a big boy.
Yeah.
He does this in the first one. He carries around this tiny ass little candle.
Yeah. So you see like a first person shot of the candle, like it's like his arm holding the candle as he walks around the house. And that was just like really weird. It was like, why would he have a candle when we know there's flashlights? But I digress. So there's one part where he's like, I'm gonna go in the closet. And he goes in the closet, and then one of the guys like walks by the room and sees him, and he's like, hey, Prozac, what's up? Are you okay? And he's like, I don't know what happened in there. Like, I had to get out of there. It was too scary. It was blah blah blah. And then he takes off his hat, and there's like scratches on the top of his head.
What? Is he bald?
Yeah, he's a bald.
Oh,
he's a bald guy. So he takes his hat off, and there's like this little like scratch in the like on the very top of his head that's like bleeding.
No way.
So
that's nuts.
Yeah, there's definitely creepy stuff that happens, and it's well done. I think that it's fun if you are into the like ghost hunting genre and you want something to check out. I think that it definitely fits the bill. And I mean, I would say if you want to be generally scared, watch the first one. But if you're just looking for something like a little more lighthearted to just like throw on in the background or something, I think this one's a fine choice.
I'm gonna watch it as soon as it's on Amazon Prime. Like, I'm all in on this shit. And if you're the kind of person who's like, you're entertained by the idea of ghost hunters or ghost adventures, but you can only handle it annually. I think this is like they pack as much into the one episode of this movie series that you would get in a whole season of Ghostbusters or Ghost Adventures. You know, like
Yeah.
a lot of shit happens. So if you can only handle it like once a year, this is a good way to go, and it has higher production values than a TV show for sure.
Yeah, they definitely are making a lot of money off this series, and they try to put it back into the movies, and it shows. And you can tell they're all like friends, and they all kind of like doing it. And I don't know. I think it's kind of cool to see like a group of independent ghost hunters doing something like this every year. I think it's fun.
Yeah, seriously, and I'm definitely gonna go and try to see the one that comes out next year. I think that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I was really bummed I couldn't go to this, honestly, after finding these on Amazon Prime. And then I tried to find the poster for A Haunting in Saginaw, Michigan to ask if people had watched it. And it showed like the Temple Theater, November 6th. I was like, oh, I wonder if they're doing one this year. And then I went to the website and saw that they were. So next year I'm going to do my best to be there. Hopefully they get this one before Halloween.
Yeah, hopefully they can push it up a little bit instead of the first weekend of November.
Awesome. So that was another episode of George on the Street. So before we move on to segment 4, the Joe Lynch interview, I want to tell my story about the John Carpenter concert, which I forgot to talk about.
Yeah, let us know. What was that like?
If you didn't know, my girlfriend, for our 3-year anniversary, she got me meet and greet tickets to see John Carpenter on Halloween night at the Palladium here in Hollywood. And he's done 3 albums now, and the first 2 were like original songs that were called Lost Themes, but this new one was reworked versions of his movie themes. It's called Anthology. So this was the tour to see if you're a fan of John Carpenter, which George and I both are. So I've never done a meet and greet concert before, but this was really cool. So the concert started at 8, but they told us to come at 5:15, so we all lined up, and then we went in, and then the tickets came with, it said mystery VIP items, which I thought would be shitty, obviously, because why would they be good? But it was a tote bag that had the like logo for Anthology on it, which is kind of sweet. And then it also came with an exclusive t-shirt with the Thing logo on it. It's a tour t-shirt. But because the way they did the merch for this tour is you could buy a shirt with one of the movie logos on it, but on the back it said like John Carpenter's Anthology.
That's actually
so we
really
got an
cool.
exclusive one that you can't get in the merch booth. So that was really cool. And then it also came with this signed poster that's 11 by 17, and it's not like a printed signed one. He like signed them all, and it's got Michael Myers in the ghost sheet when he's wearing the guy's glasses.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it just says Halloween. It's so cool. And then we lined up, and then it was really quick getting to meet him. But you just walk in, you shake his hand, and then they take your picture. But he was like the nicest guy. I was like, I'm a huge fan. It's really good to meet you. And then my girlfriend was like, she was like, hey, thanks for meeting us. He was like, thanks for meeting me. Thanks for giving me your money. And it was an eye-opening experience to meet him, because we've talked about these news stories before where he says stuff like, yeah, they can remake my movies, they just, as long as they're paying me. And it sounds kind of like snarky and jaded when you read it, but then when you meet him and hear the way he talks, he's just like a goofy guy.
Right.
And you can tell that he's just joking. So that was really cool. And so then we got to take our stuff back to our car and come back, and we got to get in a special line where we got to go in before anyone else. So we went right up to the front, and so he has a full band. He's on the like, he's not lead synth because he's like 68 years old.
Right.
He's on the like backup synth, but his son is the lead synth guy. So that's really cool. And then he has a drummer, a rhythm guitarist, and a lead guitarist. And he played stuff from every movie, which was awesome. Like all of his big ones and some of his more obscure ones, like Village of the Damned, which I know a lot of people don't like that movie, but I really think it's cool. And he had a screen behind him where they would show clips of these movies. And he's just like a goofy guy. He was really funny. He was dancing to all his music. He was throwing up the devil horns every 5 minutes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it was really cool to be up front. No one was really moshing. And the one thing though that it just kind of sucked was that there are 4 people that somehow managed. Like one person came up and they were like, "Hey, can I scoot in next to you?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" Because I'm not a dick. And then they scoot next to me, turn around, and call 5 more people. Which I turned around and they were like, "What, is this spot taken?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, one person asked to cut in here, and there's 5 of you, so like don't be an asshole, basically. It's like what
Yeah.
I'm getting at. And they were like, okay, yeah, whatever, dude. And then, of course, the entire time they have their phones out and they're filming the whole concert, which is just, it's not necessarily a pet peeve. It's just, I don't get it. If 5 people are going to go to a concert to film it, just send one person to film it and then watch it on your phone, because they were watching the concert through their phone. You know, you're not watching the concert.
Right.
It's just, it's fucking stupid. And he kept looking at them from the stage because he didn't have like lights on him, so you could see them, and he was giving them the stink eye. But they were all, it was 5 of the fucking stupidest idiots on planet Earth, I guess, because they didn't figure it out. But other than that, it was really cool. He's pretty funny. He's good at playing, you know, the simpler stuff, and his lead guitarist was fucking awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like a cool tour. I definitely want to check them out. I know it's coming to Michigan like relatively soon, and it's pretty cheap, so I'm gonna try to go to that when it comes to town around my area.
Dude, yeah, it's $20. Like, you can't beat it.
Right.
It's John Carpenter. It's awesome. And the merch, I don't ever say this about concerts because merch is usually shitty. If you want some cool John Carpenter shirts, like, go to this, bring like $150 because each shirt is $30. I got 3 shirts and a set of pins. Like, it's all so cool. The merch is not tacky at all. It's all really sweet. Like, my favorite thing I got was, it's a t-shirt with the Statue of Liberty on it, but then the Statue of Liberty is wearing Snake Plissken's eye patch.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I was like, this is just too cool not to get. And they had just a ton of cool stuff. So if this was the beginning of the tour, so he'll probably come through a lot of towns in the U.S. And you know, it's going to be a rare thing to see him play actual movie themes instead of original music. So I would suggest checking that out. So with that, we're coming to the end of the show here. We're going to close it out, but remember to stick around for the interview with Joe Lynch. He was amazing. I think this is a really cool interview. He tells us some stuff that he hasn't, I don't think, said before to other people about Mayhem, which he loves to talk about it. And thankfully, he said he'd come on the show in the future. So if you want to see that, make sure to tweet at the show, at Fear Frequency, or at George Frazard, or at Jimmy Champane. Make sure you mention Joe Lynch. He's at the Joe Lynch, and let him know that you want him to come on the show, because we'd love to have him on. He's a great dude, and Mayhem's a great movie. So you should stick around for that. It's about 20 minutes long. It's a great interview. You listened to it, right, George?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. A lot of cool insight into, you know, this movie, which, again, it is out now. People should go watch it, get it on VOD, and I mean, he's known for more than just this movie, so he's kind of big, and I think a lot of people are going to be interested in what he has to say.
Yep, he's a great dude. So before I close this out, make sure you go over to iTunes. I'm going to harp on this again, and rate us. It doesn't even have to, like, we're not going to tell you rate us 5 stars, but if you like the show, it helps out if you go rate the show. You don't even have to review it, and if you're really feeling nice, you could review it. And share it with everyone you know. We really want to turn this into a big thing, because we think we have something pretty cool here. You can follow me on Twitter at Jimmy Champane, and you can follow the show at Fear Frequency. Where can we find you, George?
You can find me on Twitter at George Frazard, and on Instagram at Georgia4.
Radical. So that is episode 6 of Fear Frequency. Remember, next week we will be right on time on Tuesday. It was just a really busy week. But as always, you never know who might be listening. So yeah, thanks for taking the time to do this interview for me.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Totally. So we were both super stoked on the movie. It was my favorite movie of the year, and my co-host really liked it a lot. I think our favorite thing was that you got Stephen Yeun and Samara Weaving to be in it. Can you?
Oh, me too.
Yeah, can you talk about how that came about? Because they're both pretty big actors right now. A lot of people like them.
Well, my sexual favors are the best sexual favors that possibly could. No, that's not. I should not be joking about that at all. I'm probably triggering people left and right now. Like, oh no, he can't say that. No, to be totally honest, I mean, honestly, I think it comes down to the material itself. If they were stupid enough to look at or smart enough actually to look at my past films, they probably would have passed immediately. But frankly, the serendipity of how I got them was really just down to that script that Matthias wrote was something that hit me so hard when I read it that I was hoping that I would have actors who would kind of get what I was going for, that we were, kind of all on the same page. And weirdly enough, on an odd kind of circumstance of events, I was already kind of developing and prepping this movie, so to speak, before we had a green light, before we had actors, whatever. And then we got the fateful call that every filmmaker wants and also dreads a little bit, because it's like, we got the money. And then it was not all the money, but we got some money. And because the budget that we were at was not a lot higher, but it was higher where you need to be financially responsible with who you cast, because there has to be a return. So a lot of times in the cases of these movies, you got to make sure that you have actors that are going to be profitable, or at least attractive to the foreign markets, the international markets, like a wide swath that they're hitting all the demographics and stuff. And there's a very small amount of actors that actually do that. So when we were given the kind of soft green light, it was for a much lesser budget, but at the same time, the investor was so cool where they said, like, it's not cast contingent. So we could open up the net, widen the net a little bit. And instead of like hiring the people that we know are going to give us a safe return, it was who's the best person for the job, or who's the best actors for the job. And that was a Friday. On Sunday, that next Sunday, I watched the episode of The Walking Dead where Steven's character Glenn fake died. Uh-huh. And now I had been a fan of that show from episode 1. I was a huge fan of the comic. I was obsessed with everything that Kirkman was doing, and I loved what Frank Darabont brought to the table with that. And I had followed Steven's performance as Glenn from episode 1 all the way up until the end. And at that point, he obviously, I knew from the comics where things were going. It was just a matter of time when.
Right.
But that one threw me for a loop, because I didn't see it coming, because I didn't see a big bat with barbed wire behind it, like in that situation. So I was like, what? And I was heartbroken. And it wasn't just me. It seemed like the whole world was heartbroken over that. And that really blew me away, that there's this this actor that is universally loved. And anytime that he kind of comes to the table with a performance, people just inherently love him. And there's not many actors like that these days, who exude both charm and resonance and a likability, but who can also kick ass, but not seem like they're just a superhero or an action star in training. So that was where I kind of had that Barton Fink feeling moment in my gut where I went like, oh my God, what if it was Steven? What if Steven was my everyman? And luckily, because Circle of Confusion, who produced this, also produces The Walking Dead. So I went in and said that name, and they didn't bat an eyelash. They went like, that's a really intriguing idea. And because we don't have to worry about casting, for a certain demographic or a certain, price point, we could take a chance with that. And it just felt right. Like I just had it in my gut. And then when we sent it to Steven and he really responded to it, it was just kind of like, all right, all bets are off at this point. Let's run. And Samara was cast about 4 weeks before we shot. And that was mainly just because of the time and the speed that we just kind of jumped into the world of prepping. I was already in Belgrade, Serbia, kind of prepping while Steven was working on something else. I think he was working on Okja at the time. But, we had a little bit of time before, and Samara's name came up. And I remembered her from Ash vs. Evil Dead and how much I loved her in that. And, I was up for the babysitter for one hot minute, so I knew that script really well. And when they told me that she was the one who was playing the babysitter, I was like, oh my God, whoever that actor is who's doing that part, she's got to be fearless. And she's got to have crazy charm and energy to kind of flip the switch on the audience. So we ended up doing it wasn't even an audition. It was more of just a kind of meeting over Skype. And within 5 minutes, I just knew. I was like, oh yeah, we're going to definitely be good friends, during this process. And, the big fear that you always have with a movie that's considered like a two-hander, where you have okay, these two are kind of my heroes throughout the whole film. You pray that they get along. And if you're really lucky, they really like each other and that there's chemistry. And within 5 minutes of them meeting at a dinner a couple days before we shot, where we kind of brought them in, you just knew. You had that feeling, the same feeling I had, that Barton Fink feeling that I had when I first thought about Steve, when I first thought about Samara separately. It's you just knew. And then it's their charm and their chemistry that really does carry the movie.
Yeah, totally. And I think there's that one scene where they talk about their music taste. I think one of the big reasons that worked for me was because they have so much chemistry. And I remember you said at Beyond Fest that scene, you kind of like improvised it, I think.
Yeah.
Or can you talk about that a little bit? Because I know a lot of people that seen the movie love that scene.
It was something that was on the page. It said, "They wait." That was it. It just like it was. We're going to show where they were and that they were, kind of nail guns ready, waiting for the siren to come out. And then we were going to cut away, and we were going to cut back to the siren talking about like how she can't get out and shit. And then we're going to cut back to them, and they say, "Oh, we only have a certain amount of time. We got to get going." And then they're going into the accountant fight. They've just felt like there was something missing. And because we were about halfway through the shoot at that point, it was a love fest. I mean, it was as hard as it was to make that movie, and it was as expedient as we were, and how sick everybody was, having colds and flus and everything. We were all just like, at the midway point, we were just like, ugh, like we were hurting. But thankfully, because everyone got along so well, we had a little bit of time the night before we shot that scene, which was going to be first up, say, on that Friday. On Thursday night, like, my DP, Steve Gaynor, was smart enough to go, what would really kind of help us hit the ground running tomorrow to make our day is if we go upstairs now, just you and me and my grip department, and let's block out that scene so that we set the lights up now so we don't have to wait for the actors in the morning, or they don't have to wait for us. We can just kind of be ready to shoot. And I thought, of course, any chance that I can get to like shave off some time that can buy me some time later, I'm all fucking for it. And it just so happened that the van that was transponing them back to their hotel wasn't there in time. So they were like, well, we got some time to kill. We'll just go upstairs. Instead of you using stand-ins, we'll do it. I mean, all we have to do is just stand there. So who gives a shit? We'll just hang out some more. So we all go upstairs, and I throw out to both of them, look, top 3 bands go, top 3 bands go. And I quickly realized that they were not talking as them. They were talking as their characters and their responses. And I like, as a director, you just go, catnip. Like, that's the sort of shit you want, that you're praying for, that they would do that. So I quickly ran home, and I wrote out that scene, kind of what I heard, like I kind of threw things in left and right here, but the crux of it, the general gist of what we discussed is everything that came out of that original conversation, so you could technically say that it was improv. So I came back the next day with 3.5 pages of dialogue, and in most cases, most actors go, ugh, or I can't do this, and they run back to their trailer. Thankfully, I had 2 actors who were so attuned to having that happen to them because of TV. Because on TV, things change at the drop of a hat. The day before, an hour before, the minute before, they're changing stuff, and they were trained to be able to roll with the punches. So Steven and Samara both looked at the pages and went like, we got this, especially since they're reading dialogue that they said the night before. So that whole scene was birthed on set. And I agree, like, it's my favorite scene in the movie because it's like in the middle of all this shit. And this happens to me on every movie. Like, anytime there's a moment where, you have a big action scene or a big anticipatory scene, you always wish and pray that, like, are we going to see a human moment here? Like, the one that really inspired that moment is the moment in Die Hard where the one terrorist is like waiting for everyone to start shooting in the lobby, and he looks down and there's a Hershey bar, and he starts eating that Hershey bar. It's like, what a human moment.
I love it.
In what's otherwise a very like by the numbers scene that you're like, okay, we're watching all the bad guys get ready to take all the SWAT team out, and yet next time you see him, he's halfway done with the Hershey bar. It's like that to me made those guys so human, that and was part of the thing that I think McTiernan was going for, was to humanize these guys and not just make them mindless killers or mindless thugs. And I wanted to do the same thing here. And I think that's a turning point for the movie, because it makes you realize, like, okay, these people are normal people too. They have the same likes, they have the same dislikes. They quote Risky Business. They say they love Dave Matthews Band. Like, you don't get that moment very often, both in movies but in tropes like these. So I wanted to take advantage of it. And it was also a scene that I go, if it doesn't work, I can cut it. No one would remember it. No one would be, worried about it otherwise. It does not forward the plot at all, at least at first. And then when we put it in and we loved it so much, and then my editor Josh decided he thought it would be funny one day and throw in Dave Matthews Band later on, thinking like, well, we'd never get this, but it'll make Joe laugh. And then it did make me laugh, and I went, fuck, dude, I kind of have to put that in the movie now. It's so good. And then, I told that to my producers, and they're like, we're never going to get a Dave Matthews Band song. What are you, crazy? And then we screened it twice. And both times, the crowd applauded because they felt like they were as invested in the characters as they should be. Like, we care about these guys, even when it comes down to, what song do you listen to after you have sex? Or what song do you listen to when, when you're having a quiet moment, and you just so happen to have ants marching on your Spotify. Boop, here we go. Let me set the scene. And it made everything feel so real for me and for them. So it's really one of the most gratifying things out of the whole Mayhem experience is that scene would have never happened if I didn't have this perfect storm of a van being late, a crew that was cool enough to let us do this thing to kind of help us make our day, and two actors who were just so game and so on it and so knowing of their characters that we were able to generate this thing. Like, we incubated it and executed it all from the kind of love and passion that came with making this movie.
Awesome. Yeah, that's just such a cool little story. I had to bring it up because I loved hearing about it so much after that screening. And
I love talking about it. Like, yeah. Believe me, I'm really proud of that moment.
Yeah, I would too. And then something else I really like, my whole big thing with why I like this movie is because every piece of it just clicks together in a really good way. Like, it all feels fluid, and I really like the soundtrack a lot. Is there a story behind choosing like Steve Moore to do that soundtrack, or like using synth music and stuff?
Well, I always knew that I wanted to make this score be synthy, like without being derivative of like the current trend. Like ever since The Guest and It Follows was using synth. It seemed like all of a sudden everybody was using it, but not using it in a way that felt like organic to the movie itself. It felt more like, I just want to make an homage to the 80s. There are certain movies that it works well with, like Joe Begos's The Mind's Eye and Almost Human. Like, he was deliberately trying to make a movie that felt like it was made in 1983, so that made sense. But a lot of times it wasn't, and I was also apprehensive of doing that because I didn't want that to happen. So Bear McCreary, who'd done all my other scores, he was going in a more synthy route, like on certain projects like The Walking Dead, where I was loving what he was doing. That made it feel more like John Carpenter and Goblin. I love that stuff.
Totally.
So that, and also just the idea of being in this like corporate world where the space, if everyone shut the fuck up, all you would hear is bleeps and bloops and synthetic sounds and machines whirring, and it felt like this atmosphere almost calls for it being a little more artificial and not be real strings and not be vocals, and let the machine take over in a way. So, but the problem was that when we finished our cut, when we went to Bear, and Bear was bummed he couldn't do it because he had 5 other movies that he was doing at the time, and all of them had to be done by the Toronto Film Festival. Damn. So I was like, fuck, dude, what are we going to do? And then within an hour, Josh Ethier, who edited the movie, who also worked on Joe Begos's films, who also employed Steve Moore. Now, I am a huge fan of his band Zombie, and have been for up to that point almost 15 years. So it was always in the back of my head, like, I love Steve Moore and I love the stuff that he did on the Cub score and the Guest score, but I just never thought of it. And Josh is like, dude, why don't we just call Steve Moore up? I can get him on the phone now. And within the hour, so I went from losing my composer to gaining a new composer in 60 minutes. Because we got on the phone with Steve, and Steve's like, "Oh, dude, I love your stuff. Like, I would love to do this. Like, I'm in New York, so I'm like, no problem." So we did the entire score over Skype and email over the course of like 2 weekends, and it was one of the most gratifying work relationships I had ever had. I loved it. I loved working with Steve. So Steve was a major component in the movie because he really brought the movie to life in a way that I never even thought it would. And like one of the most rewarding things out of this whole experience is I now have a soundtrack that Steve Moore did, and it's on vinyl of all things. The soundtrack comes out November 24th. And what's even cooler is that the vinyl is it's limited edition, but there's a version of the vinyl that is one bloody red eye, just like in the movie. So it's like that's awesome. So, whether it's the Steve Morse score or all the other music that we have in the film, from, the old school Rossini classical track to Faith No More to Dave Matthews Band and all that, like the fact that I'm able to have all of this in the tapestry of the movie, I mean, it's very, very much reflective of my tastes, but it just felt right, and we kind of went with our gut with every decision, even down to the music, and it just felt like it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's so good. It all came together in like a really cool way. And then I got one more question. So like,
Sure.
this is a corporate movie. I used to work, in corporate, and it's really easy to pin certain people to people in the movie, and you can like imagine that it's someone from like one of your old jobs. Is there someone or any characters in this movie that you were like, this person has to be like this because they reminded you of someone in one of your old jobs or something?
Every one of the archetypal characters, the boss, the siren, the bull, the reaper, every one of them I've worked with before in one capacity or another. I also worked a corporate gig. If you were at Beyond Fest, you heard me do my spiel about how, like, look, movies are not sustainable enough these days for anybody to just kind of make a movie and then you're living off of the residuals and the fat paycheck that you got to begin with. It's like, no, those days are gone. So you really have to want to make movies, because it's become more of a passion project or a hobby, if you will, than it is the thing that kind of brings home the bacon. So I had to, succumb to working a corporate gig because I had to pay the bills. And this one job came along and I couldn't really say no. So I did it, and it was not gratifying, and it was very soulless at times. And the amount of times that I heard "let's discuss" is enough for me to have hives every time I hear it. And just the idea of the passive-aggressive nature of what that corporate office kind of instills, the petri dish of passive aggression that a lot of times is the corporate world, was just something that I just had to comment on. And so everyone that is in the movie, like, I'll never say their names, but like, yeah, I worked with a John Towers, and I worked with an Irene Smythe before, and I definitely worked with an HR person that was like that, and I definitely worked with an executive who was like the siren. But what was great was that, like, I was able to kind of relay the information to the actors, but at the same time, like, as much as we make them into caricatures in a way by giving them those, Tarantino-esque titles and stuff like that, and make them more as bigger than life, was that felt like they were broad enough that everybody could see a boss in them, and everybody could see an employee type in them, so that they can relate to to what it feels like to be Derek in that situation where, you've been killing yourself climbing up the corporate ladder, and how you can be shot down within 2 hours of you being at work. And that's just commonplace for them. That's like what the Reaper says when the shit is hitting the fan. He just kind of sighs and goes, Wednesday. Like that's these guys are used to that, So yeah, like there's definitely a lot of personal truth in a lot of those characters.
God damn, man. I don't know. I could just talk about this movie all day, but I'll let you get back to your work here. But I really want to thank you for doing this. It's a big thing for us. This is a big
Jimmy,
movie that we love.
Thank you so much. Well, please get the word out.
I'm doing everything I can. I think we brought it up every week.
Oh, thank you. But word of mouth is really the best course of action here, and the more people I think hear about it, the better. And yeah, and look, down the line, please, I would love to be a guest again, if that's cool.
Oh yeah, man. I'm in LA, so whenever you want to come on the show, you're always welcome.
Sweet. Awesome. All right, Jimmy, thank you so much again, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Goodbye.
All right. Bye-bye.